what happened in 2004. Don't forget 2004. Advertising Secrets of an Impossible Election Victory is a new book by Jayashree Sundar. It's about politics, it's about advertising, it's about elections. Elections are always interesting, especially at this time. We follow them like a cricket match, and actually, we should be because they are some of the most interesting things that are happening in our country. Jayashree has worked for 17 years at Lintas with clients like Cadbury, Maruti Suzuki, ICI, Gillette, Parker, Xerox, and Pons. She went on after that to join Leo Burnett, where she was the president north for 5 years. She now teaches marketing courses at business schools all over India, and she is also an author. And we're going to talk today about her book, Don't Forget 2004. So, Jayashree, the title of the book, don't forget 2004. So, what was important about 2004 in this specific election?
So I think the most important thing about 2004 was that I think it was the coming of age of political advertising in India. It was, the Wall Street Journal actually said at the end of the election that it was global branding agencies came in and, political brands got pitted against each other. In fact, it is there in the book. And I mean, this is what they said. Global ad agencies brought branding to Indian election, and I think it set the tone for whatever's come much later. But I think the 2004 elections were probably the greatest that India's seen because there were two amazing big campaigns against each other. One was India Shining, and the other one was Aam Aadmi Ko Kya Mila. This is the story of that Aam Aadmi Ko Kya Mila campaign, which every pollster got the result wrong. There were the exit polls. There was a huge narrative that these guys are going to not even get as many seats as they got 5 years ago. But on the counting day, there was a completely different result.
And this often happens, and we often wonder how do people get it so wrong? Because
Yeah,
there's so much data and so much collection of data these days.
yeah,
But even the last elections, people got it totally wrong. Even these elections, we're still speculating that who's going to
nobody
get
knows.
how many seats.
Exactly, exactly. And therefore, the point you said that we follow elections like a cricket match. So they always say that there are two religions in India. One is Bollywood and one is cricket. And then I'm adding the
No,
third,
there are
which is
three
politics.
religions. Politics is a big religion.
Absolutely. Look at how that's the narrative these days. And everyone's waiting for March 10th when the counting's going to happen. And there's so much of guesswork. And
So
so,
I can't think of a more perfect time for your book because this is all what it is about. But
yeah.
let's talk specifically about your role. And I think we always get concerned because when we start to think about advertising campaigns and you had a bird's eye view, we always feel that the person with the most amount of money, and you hear now these, I mean, of course, in India, the budgets they don't reveal, but in US, these outrageous campaign budgets that they talk about.
Thousands of crores get spent right now. I can't even imagine. It's mind boggling. But at that time, the India Shining campaign had been running already for 3 or 4 months. And the unofficial figure was around 400 crores had been spent at that time.
And that was
And
2004,
yeah,
right?
the official figure was around 80. And we did this at a minuscule of that because, till January, I mean, the elections were preponed that year. It was supposed to be in September, October. But because there were three assembly elections, the Congress got a drubbing, and Prime Minister Vajpayee was advised by his people that prepone the elections because we're going to form the government again. So they preponed it by 8 months. And the Congress didn't have an ad agency. So in the month of January, they called for a pitch for elections starting in April. And here India Shining had been pounding away for 4 months. So, that is when it started. Talking about the bird's eye view, actually, I had a ringside view because we worked in the war room for about 5 months, very closely and created the advertising. And that's what my book is about. And my book is actually inside the ad agency, which very few people know what happens in an ad
Yes.
agency. So it's a creation of a political campaign which people don't get to know too much
You
about.
can
And
change
that's what
lives. This is what advertising shows us. It can really change kind of, the scenario and
yeah,
change lives
yes,
and change
yeah.
results.
Because there was a very strong consumer insight based on the result research we had done. We sent people out. It wasn't that all of us were just sitting in a air conditioned boardroom and deciding what should happen for a billion people. So teams were sent out, we did research, we had it on camera, and strategies were formed from there.
But
How
more
to.
than strategies, Jashi, I want to ask you because it's that emotional connect. And how were you able to make that emotional connect? Especially this David and Goliath story, we're always wanting the underdog to win. Tell us about that because no matter how much research you do, finally it's got to touch you.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And there was one piece of very interesting data we found that urban India doesn't go out that much to vote. At that time, around
Yes.
55% of India went to vote. And while urban India was very good in discussions and the chattering classes, very excited about things, but on the voting day, about 35-40% went to vote. And rural India actually feels very empowered. And we felt in our research, our hypothesis was that, well, India is shining, but is it shining for everyone? So we took it into a blue ocean strategy, which is let's go to the unserved market, people like unemployed people or women for who really nothing ever gets done, even till now.
Nothing changes.
India, 48.5% of the population, and they hardly get addressed, or the farmer. So there were targets that were totally untouched. And when we went and did our research, they had not even heard, and they were actually fuming on a lot of things. So, that is the kind of targeting. We first you have to find your consumer and target, and then you've got to find the messages that hit the heart, so that on the voting day they actually go out to vote.
Now we'll talk about hitting the heart and then following through. How much of that is correlated?
Hitting.
Because
Oh, absolutely. It should be correlated because if you don't keep up your promises, because every party comes out with a manifesto that if we come to power in the next 5 years, this is what we'll deliver to you. And a lot of promises get made, sometimes they don't get kept up. And then the consumer is not a fool. So they have the all powerful ballot in their hand. And 5 years later, you may find that
they'll
you're
kick you out. But let's talk about this the traditional advertising because in 2004 it was a lot more about the traditional advertising and traditional advertising techniques. And when I say that, I mean billboards, on the ground, TV, newspapers. But now with social media, the world is changing. What would you have done differently today versus what you did in 2004?
Well, I think the basics of finding the right target audience, finding the right messaging hasn't changed. The basics haven't changed. The tools have changed. So now you can reach people. See, India's amazing penetration of mobile phones. There are 900 million mobile phones in India, and smartphones are 54 million. So there's a phone in almost every hand, and the penetration is huge. Coupled with that, the huge numbers of people who are on Facebook, 416 million, WhatsApp, 319 million, even Instagram is inching up
Yes.
at 290 million. Twitter is actually much smaller. But
Twitter is for the intellectuals. We don't get it.
yeah, and things like that. Having said all that, you have to find the right messaging. But the difference, as you said, mass media, it's not unimportant still, but it's a one way, So on television, I come, I tell you my ad, and I go away. But in social media, it's two ways. So I communicate with the voter, and they can write back a comment, or they can click, they can share, and I can get to know each person's profile, right down to that mohalla, that street, and I can then tailor messages. So actually, it's a very exciting time and also a very difficult time because how do you get this consumer whose attention span is so low? Though there's one other very interesting piece of data that with the pandemic, Indians started spending more time on the screen. So we used to be an
Yes.
average of 5 hours. but now we are averagely spending around 7 hours on the screen. So this it's a very potent tool, given that we are a young country whose 50% of India is below 34.
So,
But
what would you have done differently? I want to know. How would you have
I
now structured a campaign?
I would have not ignored mass media at all, because there is an electorate which doesn't look that much at social media and things like that. But I would have had very exciting campaigns, which could have been viral, which could have been entertaining, which could have been talking directly to people. I so far we haven't got live streaming and all that going in this country for some reason, but we could have started all that. It was used hugely in the US 2019 elections, 2020 elections, but it will all come here. But people are reaching out directly, and you go according to the medium. So obviously you're not going to make it very formal, and it would be more chatty, more viral, more little sound bites, and all you have is those 250 characters, or 30 seconds. So it's going to
It
be very
forces you.
quick. Yes, it forces you to not ramble. You have to get to the point.
But as advertisers, you guys are brilliant at that because you've always been working with 30-second spots, right? In between. And now Instagram has made 30 seconds and 1 minute is the only time limit you have.
Absolutely. And people are looking more at that. Actually, videos get you a lot more clicks than just, posts. So there's a lot we've all learned, and I think it would be a lot of fun to do
So
this.
now you teach. So, of course, I've got to ask this as my closing question. What lessons do you think we can all learn from this story?
The lesson that you can learn is never take the voter for granted. And ये public है, सब जानती है, and tailor your messages accordingly, hit the heart. Okay, so that one big difference in political advertising is that there is no difference in a vote. So a rich person, a poor person, a man, a woman, an urban, a rural, it's the same thing. There's no repeat purchase. It's that one day. If that person doesn't go out to vote, there's no 80-20 rule where 20% of your audience gives you 80% of your revenue. So if Thumbs Up is a masculine drink and the heavy users are the young people, then you keep targeting them. Here it's the whole universe. And that one day, if you miss. So these are all the learnings. Political brands and political advertising is different to a certain extent, because getting that consumer to go out to vote is the all important thing.
Well, Jeshri, I would love for you to show us the book as we end for today.
Yeah. Well, here it is. It's
And I know that you're going to be watching anxiously on March 10th as the rest of us
I
are.
am. I am. It's called, don't forget, 2004 Advertising Secrets of an Impossible Election Victory. And this graphic here is really a shredder, and you'll find it throughout the book inside. So when we were working, we had secret rooms, and we had decoy acts, and we had extra guards, we had armed guards, we had telephones which were with unlisted numbers, and we used to shred all the papers in the night and go and throw it somewhere else. So it was a whole different ball game inside the agency of working on this campaign.
Okay, one last question now. I can't resist. In this elections, has any campaign hit you and you've said, wow, that was brilliant?
No.
Okay. So we're waiting for you to come back into this.
Not yet. I mean, yes, little bits here and there, but nothing really that stood out. There's a lot of noise.
Well, thank you, Jayashree. Thank you for being with us and sharing all of this insights. And we'd love to always have you with us to help us understand what happens in the backdrop in terms of creating all of this. Thank you very, very
It's a
much.
pleasure to come on the Sipping Thoughts platform. Time and again, we always have fun. Thank you for inviting me.